what the US is doing, what Trump is trying to do, is actually bluffing, saying, well, I'm going to leave you on your own, Europe. And is using that bluff. So because they've been trying to increase to 3%, 3% of GDP for military spending, they've been putting pressure on that. So what is saying, oh, I'm going to leave you on your own in Europe unless you raise military spending to 5%. And probably this is part of the deal. Is aiming at Europe spending maybe 4 or 3%, and that's the whole bluff. And so that's the way I see it. But it's there's lots of contradictions here because it's not going to the root of the problem. You see, you want to arm more Ukraine, but in reality, Putin has been extremely clear for the last 3 years. It was about neutralization of Ukraine. So Ukraine becoming neutral, demilitarization, and what he called by denazification, not having a country which is extremely anti-Russian, that is actually threatening Russian population in Ukraine. That's all. Those actually requirements from Putin hasn't changed. Now is just adding oil to the fire because you are talking about arming more Europe and arming more Ukraine and bringing troops to Ukraine.
Absolutely. And none of this was necessary because there already was peace in Europe. There already was. And it was the US overthrowing the government of Ukraine that triggered all of this. It was not Russia. It was the United States. And then it was the US that forced Europe to go along with this proxy war, just like they're coercing and forcing Ukraine to do it.
We're also here today to directly and unambiguously express that stark strategic realities prevent the United States of America from being primarily focused on the security of Europe. The United States faces consequential threats to our homeland. We must and we are focusing on security of our own borders. We also face a peer competitor in the communist Chinese with the capability and intent to threaten our homeland. And
well, hold on. Let him
core
finish.
National interests in the Indo-Pacific.
Okay, there. China doesn't even threaten the American homeland. The think tanks that are actually writing the policy that Secretary Hegseth is parroting admit that China doesn't even have the ability to threaten the U.S. homeland, short of nuclear exchange. But then he says our core interests in the Indo-Pacific. Look at a map. Where's the U.S.? Is it in the Indo-Pacific? No, it is literally on the other side of the planet from the Indo-Pacific region. I'm talking about Asia. That's what they mean by the Indo-Pacific. And so this is the U.S. And later he will talk about deterring China. This is the U.S. in Asia, imposing itself on Asia, encircling and containing China, just as it has done to Russia, provoking the war in Ukraine. And what they're saying is they need to deter China from doing anything back so that this can continue, so they can maintain the status quo, slowly and surely encircling and containing these countries. So, in reality, he's talking about we can't be in Europe because we simply don't have enough resources to fight that proxy war and the war we're trying to provoke with China. So you guys, you have to help out. You have to do more to help out. This is what he's saying. Anyone want to add anything?
It's a head fake. The United States would never leave Europe the way she said it because she needs Europe. That is the way to try to put pressure on Russia from its west. She's trying to. A lot of people don't know that this thing that's going on is what they call maximum pressure. If they keep troops in Europe, they can put pressure on Russia on its western border. If they go into the Central Asia, they can come up through the south, or if they keep the bases in the Philippines and in South Korea and in Japan, they put it on its western flank. This is all about trying to strain the resources of Russia and China to try to collapse their economies and also to prevent their military capacity from outstripping the U.S. This is what it's about. In America, she can talk about leaving Europe all she wants to. She will downsize a little bit, but she's not going to come out because there's too many priorities there and there's too much at stake there. Because she fears that if she leaves out of there, then China will come with trade. You see what she's already doing with these nations there. She's trying to talk them out of China building networks and railroads and railways. This is a head fake.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, because before the special military operation, that is exactly what was happening. And the U.S. said, we need to stop this. We have to do something to stop this. Angela, I saw you unmuted your mic. Is there something you want to add?
Yeah, I think we need to look also at the possibilities of Russia being overextended. So they still need to have this conflict. So they keep on lots of troops in this part of Russia, keeping in mind that, let's say, if there was to be a possible conflict, with Iran, which is a Russian partner, and China, or in Korea, we know that there's an agreement between North Korea and Russia. There's a kind of alliance there. So Russia would be overextended. It could not come at the help of China or North Korea. So you see, it's important for the US to keep actually Russia busy on this front.
Absolutely. And again, I'm not going to bring it up on the screen, but 2019, Rand Corporation wrote a whole paper titled Extending Russia. And they have similar policy papers aimed at overextending, overstretching China, even Iran. And it's the same policy. And it just looks different because there's different people and groups and nations involved, but it's the same playbook over and over again. In all of these different areas, people are hyper-focused on one or the other, and they don't notice that this is what's going on all over, and that it transcends presidential administrations.
The U.S. is prioritizing deterring war with China in the Pacific, recognizing the reality of scarcity and making the resourcing trade-offs to ensure deterrence does not fail. Deterrence cannot fail for all of our sakes. As the United States prioritizes its attention to these threats, European allies must lead from the front. Together, we can establish a division of labor that maximizes our comparative advantages in Europe and Pacific, respectively. In my first weeks as Secretary of Defense, under President Trump's leadership, we've seen promising signs that Europe sees this threat, understands what needs to be done, and is stepping up to the task. For example, Sweden recently announced its largest ever assistance package. We applaud them for committing $1.2 billion in ammunition and other needed material. Poland is spending 5% of GDP on defense already, which is a model for the continent. And 14 other countries are co-leading capability coalitions. These groups are doing great work to coordinate Europe's contributions of legal assistance across 8 key capability areas. These are first steps. More must still be done.
So he's encouraging Europe to spend more on weapons, and specifically to use those weapons to send to Ukraine. Again, is this just an opening negotiating position? Was that what the Biden administration was doing for 3 years, just setting up their opening negotiating position? No, this is about continuing the proxy war. And he said it out loud. Division of labor, the division of labor for the U.S. empire. They can't do it by themselves anymore. They're not strong enough. They need Europe to work on facing off with Russia, and they need Japan and South Korea, Australia, anyone else that they can politically capture and turn into a battering ram to do likewise vis-a-vis China. That is what he is openly saying to you, to your face. I mean, why does he say the whole, he lays out the whole plan for all to see. It's the exact same plan that was being pushed forward by the Biden administration, the previous Trump administration, and on and on. So how do people listen to him admitting to all of this and saying all of this? Why isn't he exposing this and condemning it? Why is he going along with it? That's what doesn't make any sense to me, how people hear this and they still can't get that this is just more of the same. Am I imagining this?
Most people prefer this allusion to despair. And I noticed that a lot across America, because we have these predetermined thoughts on everything. Sometimes we box ourselves in where we can't look outside of the box because we're loyal to this guy or loyal to this party instead of being loyal to the truth. And as they say, like on all of the detective shows, motive, opportunity, and who benefits the most. When you look at all of this stuff, use those as guidelines to see if things are changing per administration. They can say that they're going to change, but all one has to do is look. Have they denounced U.S. Hegemonic ways? No. What did Trump say? That he wants to make America strong and to lead. America must lead. And one must ask the question, why must America lead? And does she have any right to lead? Because if you were a chief executive at a corporation, they look at your track record, they look at what you're doing, and they measure you on the merits of your job. And if we were to look at America, we're on the brink of thermonuclear annihilation under America's leadership. So why does America have the right to lead? That's what those are one of the things that people should look at. And that disqualifies America from the leadership position. And I don't think that the people look at it like this. I think that they are so used to privilege, American privilege, on the back of the suffering of the masses of the people around the world. And we've got to get out of that mindset, because everybody's life matters. Everybody. And I don't think we look at it like that, because the wars are so distant from us. When thousands of people are being bombed or killed, we're not looking at it like that. Their lives matter just like our lives matter. When we're sanctioning people under the guise of democracy, we're breaking up governments, we're overthrowing leaders. And then when we break the toy, we get mad that the toy is broken and we demonize the toy. We don't get mad at breaking the toy or throwing the toy. It's absolutely amazing. But I digress.
No, I mean that's at the crux of the issue, and I'm not picking on this person, but I just they're saying what would happen if arms trade to Ukraine just stopped? They would fold in weeks completely, and do people remember when Obama campaigned on ending all of Bush's wars, and then 4 years went by, he didn't end any of them. In fact, he was starting new ones. And what did Obama supporters say? They made the exact same excuses for their president, for their guy. They were making the same excuses. Oh, the Republicans sabotaged him. Oh, it's complicated. You can't just pull out. And I remember Ron Paul used to say all the time, we just sent our troops there. We can just bring them back. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, you can do that. You shouldn't have sent them in the first place. We shouldn't be arming and backing Ukraine in the first place. So if they collapse in a week, who cares? Why is that a deterrence for people who want to end the war? Why is that a deterrence against ending the war? I don't get it. I think it's just people making excuses because they don't want to admit look, it's human to want to hope, place your hope in change. But you have to be realistic about it. And then you have to be objective while watching events unfold. Is this really change? Am I just rationalizing what's happening to avoid admitting that this is not the change I want? There's nothing wrong with supporting President Trump because you thought he would change things, and then it turns out he doesn't. You're not the one who betrayed people who supported the idea of change. He is. His administration, the special interests they work for, they're the ones who betrayed people's faith in this change. But when you start to see that he's not changing and you start lying to yourself about what is really happening, then you're lowering yourself. You had the right intentions to begin with. Now you're allowing these people to drag you down to their level by making excuses and trying to rationalize why things are not actually really changing. Angelo, you got anything to say? We're almost done with this.
Well, you see, this is a speech. It's only 7 minutes, and we could talk for 1 or 2 hours about this speech, really to analyze what is behind what he's saying. But you see, average Joe is actually very distracted, and he has probably, while watching this, he has a distracted ear, but at the same time, he's picking up on what he wants to hear. So here, he's going to say, he wants to stop war. The US is not going to foot the bill. We are going to have the EU to foot the bill, and so on and so on. So basically, you pick up like 3-4 points that are positive, but actually they miss completely the whole message behind this. The war machine is not ending. Actually, it's increasing. They're going to spend more money, and because they want to keep this conflict busy, keep Russia busy here, so and they can and the US can focus on China, and that's the whole problem. You people do not do the work of sitting down and really analyzing every single word. And if you really analyze, there's lots of contradictions there. It seems clear if you are distracted, because you pick up the points you want to hear. But in reality, there's lots of contradiction here. He's saying we want to bring a long-lasting peace, but at the same time, you want Europe to spend more money, and you want to send more weapons to Ukraine. Where, it's this whole thing about seek peace through war.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. All right. So let's.
We ask each of your countries to step up on fulfilling the commitments that you have made. And we challenge your countries and your citizens to double down and recommit yourselves not only to Ukraine's immediate security needs, but to Europe's long-term defense and deterrence goals. Our transatlantic alliance has endured for decades, and we fully expect that it will be sustained for generations to come. But this won't just happen. It will require our European allies to step into the arena and take ownership of conventional security on the continent. The United States remains committed to the NATO alliance and to the defense partnership with Europe. Full stop. But the United States will no longer tolerate an imbalanced relationship which encourages dependency. Rather, our relationship will prioritize empowering Europe to own responsibility for its own security. Honesty will be our policy going forward, but only in the spirit of solidarity. President Trump looks forward to working together, to continuing this frank discussion amongst friends, and to achieve peace through strength together.
All right, and that's it. And he literally said he needs Europe to double down on Ukraine. That's what he said. He's not talking to Russia, by the way. He's not negotiating with Russia. He's talking to Europe. He's telling Europe, you need to spend more on weapons. We need more weapons. We need to expand our industrial base, our military industrial base. This is going to take time, so we need to freeze the conflict in Ukraine. Send your troops in there, freeze it, watch the line of contact, and once you're finally matching Russia in artillery shells, we'll get this thing going again, just like we did after the Minsk agreements. So it is 100% Minsk 3.0. It's Minsk on steroids, because they're talking about direct intervention by Europe with their troops. And they're talking about, the reason Europe is not spending more on NATO is because they do have social programs. That's what governments exist to do. They exist to take care of the people who actually live in the country, not bomb the rest of the planet into submission. And so that's what they've been spending their money on. And now the US is saying to them, you cannot do that anymore. We're running out of time. As both of you have said, Angelo, Rasheed, they're running out of time on China. And so they need to hurry up. And, it's going to be some sacrifice from Europe. They're going to have to shift all of this money to arms, ammunition, rebuild their society for war, essentially. And again, none of it makes any sense, because there was peace in Europe, between Europe and Russia, and between Europe and China. Not just peace, but cooperation and trade. And the US deliberately derailed all of that. And now they're coercing Europe into, literally, he said, doubling down on all of this. Any closing thoughts about just this video, Rasheed, and then Angelo?
It just goes to show you the mind of empire. I mean, regardless of administration, and they say this stuff boldly in front of everybody, and most people overlook it. It just shows you that this stuff has seeped into the minds of these politicians to a point where you almost can't remove it, because it matters not who's in the office. All one has to do is look at the policies and actions, and this is leading us down a slippery slope to war.
Absolutely. More war. We already got war. More war. Angelo.
Well, using those words, empowering Europe. I mean, that's a nice word, but in reality, it means what it means by that is Europe needs to buy much more weapons from the US, and in addition to that, actually, all the negative sides are for Europe. I mean, basically, you de facto it's NATO troops inside, in Ukraine, except the US troops. And you are not covered by the umbrella of Article 5 of NATO. So that means a direct confrontation, NATO and Russia, but that means also a risk of nuclear war because Russia doesn't have the demographic to fight, and they won't fight. They won't be willing to lose hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers. So this could go rapidly towards nuclear confrontation. So and it was very clear, I think that is the biggest risk we have. But then I would say again, I have the impression that even though most of European states are vassal states, they are controlled by the US. But public opinions, I really think that it's shifting. It is shifting. We see like new trends, like so-called populist parties coming out, and I think the pressure will be bigger. And I'm actually watching some mainstream European news, and they're highly critical. Finally, they start to be extremely critical of the US. I doubt that they will go along with what the US wants. If the US is out, European countries, they don't want to be like fools. I mean, they were fooled by already Nord Stream 2 buying energy and so on. They won't, once the US is out of the picture, they won't go along with providing cannon fodder and footing the bill.
Absolutely. So I mean, this is the whole thing. If there was a real transition of political power in Washington from the Biden administration to the Trump administration, it was very easy what the Trump administration could have done. And I remember the Duran talking about this too. They just said, stop sending weapons and money and everything to Ukraine. Just cut it and walk away, and it'll solve itself. And it would. But what are they doing? They're coercing Europe into spending more. They want to freeze the conflict, spend more to get ready for the next round of fighting. That is what they're actually doing. So people who interpret this as like 4D chess, he had a very clear path toward ending this very quickly, but he chose not to. And then you have to start asking yourself that those last 4 years that everyone makes excuses for President Trump, why he didn't make good on his campaign promises, why he continued all the policies he inherited from the Obama administration. Maybe it's because he's just another politician telling you what you want to hear to get your support and then doing whatever he feels like once he's in office. I think that's the most rational explanation for all of this. If you have anything else you want to say about this specifically, I'm going to post a video later this week with all the links to this video that we just watched and the transcripts to other press conference Secretary Hegseth had, and he just repeats the same thing over and over again. So it wasn't like a slip of the tongue. This is the plan. This is what they're doing. This is what they're trying to sell to everybody. Rasheed, anything? You want to add anything? Let me see. What was the other thing?
I was just going to say that people shouldn't be fooled. The United States has been at war all but 12 or 14 years of its history. And I had a guest on my show, Gregory Manarino. Then I had a few other guests saying that America needs war. She's addicted to war. So these wars are not just by chance. These wars are designed to expand empire. These wars are there to gobble up resources because the empire needs it to continue to go. And remember, and don't forget this part, because I think a lot of this gets lost on America. America and the UK are one and the same. They are tied to the hip economically and politically. That's why almost every war, they have pretty much the same position. That's why when you look at the money system, and you look at the gold, it is the New York exchange that is tied to the London exchange, not the other way around. And he who controls the gold controls the economies. So when you look at these two, they're one and the same. So when I say America, I'm often talking about America and the UK. They want war. They have to have it because, as Greg Manarino said, once the system stops taking on debt and stop taking on resources, boom goes the dynamite. It implodes, and therefore it needs an ever expanding base of resources and war, and we're watching it in real time.
It's a geopolitical pyramid scheme that needs to constantly expand or it collapses. I think I don't think that's hard for people to. I hope it's not hard for people to believe. I want to now, because Secretary Hegseth was talking about China, obsessed with China. I just want to show you how the Trump administration is deliberately escalating with China in an unacceptable way and in a way that is impossible to explain in terms of 4D chess. This is just continuity of agenda. I'm going to show you this from the US Department of State's website. This was 2022, but this is what it has said all the way up until like this or last week. Like they changed it very recently. And they're talking about US relations with Taiwan. And if you read through here carefully, they talk about America's one China policy. The one China policy means there is only one China. Taiwan is part of China. There's only one government of China, and it's the People's Republic of China in Beijing. Because people don't know this, Taiwan is not a country. It claims to be the sole legitimate government of all of China. It refers to itself as the Republic of China. If you read its actual constitution, it even refers to Taiwan, Mongolia, all of these places as different parts of the China the ROC claims authority over. And so what the US has been doing is playing this double game. They admitted they agreed with Beijing on the one China policy, which means they agree that Taiwan is part of China. Under international law at the UN, Taiwan is part of China. They don't have a seat at the UN because they're not a country. They don't have a seat at many international forums because they're not a country. They are an island province of China. And so another thing that it always said, because this was the actual meaning of the one China policy, they said, we do not support Taiwan independence. Very important, because that is at the crux of the one China policy. There is no independent Taiwan as part of China. Now, the US State Department under Secretary Rubio, this was February 13, 2025. So, I mean, this just happened. If you look through here, it says nothing at all about we do not support or recognize Taiwan independence. And then what they're laying out is a stepping stone toward declaring Taiwan as independent. Now, Angelo lives in China. He has spent time in Taiwan. Angelo, why don't you give your thoughts on this?
Well, this is the salami slicing strategy. They're going bit by bit. It's not done overnight. We've touched upon USAID, NED, all those agencies that have been extremely active in Taiwan, the same as they did in Ukraine. There's been actually a revolution in Taiwan, the Sunflower Revolution. It was back in 2014, and exactly the same time, during the same time that we had Maidan. And back then, I remember Taiwan had never been so close to kind of de facto unification. They were even talking about having a bridge between Jinmen Island. You know, there's an island which is actually far from Taiwan Island, but extremely close to the mainland, and it belongs to Taiwan. And they were building a bridge. I mean, imagine the symbolic of building a bridge between the mainland and Taiwan. And there was this free trade agreement. And overnight, you had those kids coming out in the streets saying, well, we do not want to lose our freedom. We want to maintain our identity and democracy. And, random US flags, and you know what it means. And this is why you have the whole, I would say, civil society in Taiwan that is completely hijacked by those foreign forces. I mean, the US. And massive amounts of money. So what they've done is that from rewriting history books back in 2004 under Chen Shui-bian, the first actually president under the DPP, which is the pro-independence party controlled by the US. Since then on, they've been actually planting the seeds of, basically controlling Taiwan's democracy from media absolutely everywhere. And now you don't have dissent voices.
Told you to walk away. That was my first and last mistake. I'm blue without your face. But what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a